Hello everyone, hope you're all keeping well and enjoying the beautiful weather that we've been having over these past number of days. During lockdown, I have taken the opportunity to study several books of the Bible with Rianne. More recently, we looked at the story of Noah, which has really stuck with me. One thing is that growing up, hearing this story as a kid, I thought a lot about Noah. I thought about what a great guy he was, of all the things he had done. But after reading it again, studying it more, I realized that the story of Noah is more a story of God. It is a story about God, not about Noah, because God is the main character. And so I want to encourage you all this Tuesday, once again, of this amazing God. Because as we know, the God of Noah is still our God today. For our God is unchanging. His character, his promises last forever. And so I have three simple truths about God that we take from the story of Noah that I hope will bring you great strength and encouragement today. Firstly, we see a God of grace. As we read Genesis chapter 6 through to 8, we read of a story of judgment. Yes, but it's more than that. It's a story of grace. God's grace to Noah. For we read in chapter 6, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, that is, every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out man whom I have created from the face of the land, man and animals and creeping things, and the birds of the heaven, for I am sorry that I made them. Then we read in verse 8, but Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Noah found favor with God. Noah lived in an evil and a sinful generation, a place of great sin, and yet he found favor with God. How come? Well, verse 9 tells us, Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Noah walked with God. Was this because Noah was without sin? Was this because Noah didn't deserve the punishment like everyone else? Well, of course not. Because we read at the end of Noah's story in chapter 8, verses 21. The ground because of man, this is it, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down a living creature as I have done. So we know that from youth, man is evil, man is sinful. And Noah was no different, of course. But he was a product of God's grace that allowed him to be blameless, allowed him to walk with God. Due to his faith and the grace of God, God would save Noah. God would rescue Noah from judgment and from the great flood. Noah and his family would, of course, be safe. Today, as Christians, you and I, we're in a relationship with God that is not based on merit, that is not based on anything that I have done or anything that you have done. Nothing to earn favor with God, no works of good, but it's all based on grace alone. Grace alone, through our faith in God, has allowed us to walk with God. You and I, we deserve punishment. We deserve judgment. But the grace of God gives us what we do not deserve. All through the Old Testament with Noah, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, these people were counted righteous before God by grace through faith. And the same is for us today. By grace you have been saved through faith, not of works. Ephesians 2, verses 8 to 9. And so the blameless life that we now have is Christ's. The judgment that we deserve was dealt with by Christ. And so we see a God of grace who continues to rescue lives from judgment. Secondly, we see a God of protection. Noah was obedient to God. Obedience and faith, of course, go hand in hand. We cannot have one without the other. Noah was obedient in building the ark, despite seeing no rain. Noah was obedient. He built the ark and he waited until the animals came along, just as God said. Then God himself would shut the doors of the ark. Once Noah was in the ark with his family, with all the animals, all he could do was hope and pray that God would protect him. Noah was completely dependent on God. For what else could he do now? We often like to take things in our own hands, don't we? If you're like me and something needs done, you want it fixed straight away. I have no time for patience, something that I must learn myself. This is what many of us are forced to do right now. Have patience, stuck indoors, waiting to get out. I'm beginning to have a lot of sympathy for Noah. For 40 days and 40 nights it rained. Chapter 7, verse 12. Then after the rain stopped, the ark rested on top of a mountain. It took another 40 days until the mountains were seen. Overall, Noah spent over a year in the ark. Over a year waiting on the Lord. Noah was patient. He relied on God's protection, for he knew that was all he could do, was just wait on God, and God protected him. Every step, God kept Noah safe. Why? Because thirdly and finally, we see a God of his word. A God of his word. We read in chapter 6, verse 18. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. God made a promise to Noah, to his family, to the animals, to keep them safe. And God would, of course, keep his promises. Chapter 8, verse 16 to 18. Go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you, of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. God kept them all safe, because he made a promise to protect them. He kept them safe in the flood. He rescued them from judgment. He protected them up on the mountain. All the time they were safe in God's hands. And this brings us today great comfort. For as we look into the past, we look into God's word, and even the past in our own lives, we see how God has protected his people, how he has kept them safe time and time again. It brings us great hope for the present. As we see how God has kept his promises time and time again, we take joy in that he will surely continue to do this. And what promises are there for us today? Well, there's countless. To name a few, he will never leave you nor forsake you. Nothing will snatch you from the Father's hands. And he who began a good work in you will carry it until the day of completion. There's many more. Promise after promise from God in his word, saying to you, you are my child. I have shown you grace. You are mine. I will keep you. I will protect you all the way to heaven. It doesn't mean that you won't encounter any tough situations, hurt, trials. But God's not going to let you go. I would encourage you today to look up, to read, to meditate upon some of these amazing promises. Even memorize some of these great promises to encourage your heart. So I ask that you remember this God, the God of Noah, who remains the same God today for us. A God who has shown grace to you. Someone who does not deserve it due to sin, due to rebellion against God, but we've been given what we do not deserve through Christ. We have a God who will protect, who will preserve your salvation, your inheritance, and a God of his word. Rejoice in this God of salvation, whose promises are so sure. Give thanks to our God who saves and who keeps. May this bless your heart today. Amen.